Hey everyone, this is Andy Dowling from the Australian metal band LORD and host of the Andy Social Podcast. This is my nod to the old school. This is a podcast series all about the old school mixtape and compilation, where I get to talk to some of the best in the business about their first introductions to heavy music and what those early mixtapes looked like. My nod to the old school is brought to you by LORD's brand new album, Fallen Idols, available now through Dominus Records and lord.net.au. For us, Fallen Idols was inspired by the old school mixtape. Whether you love thrash metal, power metal, melodic death, black and thrash, or even a bit of AOR, Fallen Idols is the ultimate mixtape that throws back to the nostalgic past of when we first discovered heavy music, but accompanied by a fresh, modern, world-class production. Here's a quick clip from track 1 of Fallen Idols titled United, Welcome Back.
Didn't miss the drama or the scandal. You're the singer of the song. Speak only once, we have something to say. It's from the cold, it's far too long. Breaking the walls, kick down the doors. It's time. We're united, scream and welcome back. It's time to see.
Here we go. Episode 1 of my nod to the old school is with Andy LaRocque. Best known as a guitarist in King Diamond, but also a producer and the man behind Sonic Train Studios based out of Stockholm, Sweden. Andy is a legend in the metal world. In our chat, Andy shares heaps of stories growing up in Sweden, discovering music for the first time, some of those first shows he attended, and those early mixtapes and compilations, plus heaps more. If you want to learn more about Andy and his world, you can go to kingdiamondcoven.com. King Diamond's got their latest live album called Songs for the Dead Live, available right now. They've just released a beer, which sounds amazing, called Black Horseman Beer, and they have a new album that's coming out sometime in 2020. Sonic Train Studios, you can go to sonictrainstudios.com, and of course, Andy is on Facebook and Twitter. All the links and resources, everything that we discuss in this chat will be in the show notes over at lord.net.au or andydowling.net. Nice and easy, folks. But for now, here's my chat with Andy LaRocque. First things first, did you have a mixtape when you were growing up, and what was on it?
Oh, I did. I actually had several, and that was usually back in, I would say, late 80s or mid, I would say from the mid 70s up till, maybe the late 80s. And on those mixtape, you could hear anything from Status Quo, T-Rex, Slade, Sweet, Alice Cooper, Black Sabbath, all kinds of stuff in the early days, and then slowly, I would say in the early 80s, it changed to Ozzy Osbourne, maybe some Steve Vai stuff, and all kinds of stuff that were popular in the 80s, I believe, up until the CD came in, later in the 80s, for me at least, so that was quite a travel, actually, from the mid 70s where I really started to listen to music for, taking it seriously until the CD came about,
Where did you get all the music from? Where did you get all the songs from? Was it from siblings, or was it from friends, or the radio?
In the very beginning, it was actually from the radio. I had one of those recordable, cassette players with a built-in radio kind of thing. So when there was a good show, on radio, I just recorded, some songs and made my own tapes about, from that. And then later, I guess it came from, vinyl. And recorded it onto cassette tape that way. That's the way we did it back then, And nowadays, when you talk about, mixtapes, people, younger people, it's like, what is that?
Well, it's like the Spotify playlist now. That seems to be the modern mixtape.
Yes, it is. But the quality back then wasn't maybe, was a little questionable, I would say, on the cassette tapes, depending on how many copies you had, and all that.
Did you have any trouble when you were first starting out to try and record off the radio or later off vinyl? Was it a difficult thing? Was it a time-consuming thing for you to have to try and piece together these compilations of your favorite songs?
No, not really. Not really. That went pretty smooth, actually. No, that was fine. That was, I guess, in the beginning, it was just hard to time in, the different radio shows with the good music on. That's the issue we had then. And then, of course, you didn't really care about the quality of the music back then. I mean, sound wise, I'm talking about. So if you copied some tapes, from friends, and you didn't really care, if it was like a lot of low end or all the high end missing and stuff, it wasn't that important. You just went into it, for the music.
You probably heard versions of songs in those early years where later on when you actually heard the proper recording of it, it might have sounded really different for you or unusual.
Especially when you heard a song when you were like 12, 13 or 14 years old, and you hear that many years later, it's like, wow, was it how it sounded like, because you listen to it in from different perspectives. If you know what I'm saying, when you're like 12, 13, you listen to a certain thing in the music, and now, a few years later, you listen to other things in the music, actually, So it's, some of the songs can be quite different, definitely.
And I think it'd be more distinct for you, given that you're a producer and an engineer and you have your own studio. So your ear and what you listen for now versus when you're younger, it's very, very different.
Very, very different. That's for sure. And that's why when I work in the studio, I usually work with heavy metal, hard rock, and black metal, and the extreme types of metal in every way, So when I get home, for example, in the, evenings or afternoons, whatever, I just don't, that's the last thing I want to listen to. And when you go to a party, sometimes, people put on, your own music or something that they think you like, and it's like, oh no, please spare me from that. I want to listen to something different, or maybe no music at all, because you've been working with music for, days and days and years, and you just want some, rest for the ear sometimes, So when there are music playing in your genre, if you know what I mean, like heavy metal and stuff like that, you instantly start to listen to it in a different way. Like you start working right away, and start analyzing things, and okay, that kick drum right there and the guitars, how that's sounding, rhythms and melodies and all kinds of stuff, instead of something softly playing in the background, so that's a different way to, that's different.
Is there a song or is there a type of music that you would listen to when you're giving yourself a break from metal and rock that that people would be surprised to know?
Nothing I can say, in particular. It's just something soft in the background, doesn't really matter. Something where I don't have to focus on and start analyzing things,
You don't have to pay
It can be, something just in the background, kind of like elevator music, kind of, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Is there any of those, those bands you mentioned earlier that you first started listening to and were on those early mixtapes? Are a lot of those bands still bands that you listen to now?
To be honest, I haven't listened to those bands in a very long time, actually. I think the last band of those I mentioned was probably Black Sabbath. That was a few years back when they released their latest album. That's probably one of the bands I listen to most. For example, Status Quo that I grew up with, I haven't listened to them in a very long time, but they were quite big in the 70s, and I was a big fan of them back then.
When King Diamond kicked off in the 80s, and you had grown up listening to music and putting together your own mixtapes, was it a bit of a surreal moment to see other people starting to put together their own mixtapes, or seeing your music on compilations, like official compilation albums? Were there moments where you sort of had to pinch yourself and go, wow, this is happening to us, we're on the other side of the fence now?
No, I didn't really reflect on that at all, to be honest with you. Of course, it's cool when you get some feedback by people liking your music, of course, but back then, I don't think I really, reflected over that at that time. But I mean, I think I maybe reflect over that now, though, more than I did then. It's like, wow, that's cool, man. I mean, you always appreciate people who like your music, of course. I mean, it's great to have fans all over the world, that like what you are doing, of course. So yeah, definitely.
I guess it's easier to look back now than when you're in the midst of it all, and it's all fresh and new, and you're so immersed in what you're doing and just wanting to do the best that you can.
Exactly. I totally agree with that. Yeah, exactly.
With some of these mixtapes that you had over the years, where were the most common places that you would listen to them? Was it just at home, or was it out at different places?
No, that was probably just at home, And sometimes, pick up the guitar and play along with a few songs, and trying to learn some riffs and stuff, So, see, I started working right away.
Can you remember, I guess, talking about guitar a little bit, can you remember some of those first riffs that you did learn?
One of the first riffs, which is common for everyone, I guess, was probably Smoke on Water, right?
Yeah.
With Deep Purple, And there was probably some David Bowie songs too, like Rebel Rebel. Remember that song?
Yeah.
From the Pin-Up album, I guess, from 73 or 74, something like that. And some Alice Cooper riffs here and there, and Status Quo stuff. And later some Thin Lizzy, of course, some UFO stuff with Michael Schenker. And then later some Ozzy Osbourne with Randy Rhoads, Jakey Lee later, and, you name it. So many things, going through my head right now with all those crazy riffs, so... Yeah, definitely a good thing to have, back then.
It would have been a big change, listening to, say, Randy Rhoads and some of that early Ozzy Osbourne, compared to some of the more 70s rock that you mentioned just before. That would have been a dramatic change in probably the way that you started to learn and grow as a guitar player.
Yeah, definitely, because when I first heard the Ozzy Osbourne with Randy Rhoads, I was totally blown away by his guitar style. His playing style was just amazing, and I still think it is. But back then, I was like 17 or 18 years old, and I was just totally blown away. I just loved that guy so much. I thought it was absolutely unique and amazing. And in the beginning, that was a big influence for me, definitely.
Do you think you still got some of these mixtapes from years gone by?
I might actually have it somewhere, in my garage somewhere. I might have a few tapes still. Yeah,
that's cool.
That's possible. Yeah.
Well, I think it's been a common theme with, or a thing with a lot of the people I've spoken to when I've asked that question, and they've paused for a moment and thought, actually, you know what? I think I might have them somewhere. And there'd be a dusty box somewhere sitting in a basement or in a cupboard somewhere, locked away, or a shed. So it's definitely bringing back some memories for a few people that are reflecting on it.
Definitely. I still have the first vinyls I ever bought, though, from Deep Purple, Machine Head, and Made in Japan, and some Status Quo albums, in the early 70s, and also some singles, somewhere, So I still have a lot of that stuff actually from that time.
Did you have friends that you grew up with that exposed you to this music? Was there sort of an influence around you at the time that got you into a lot of this great rock?
Yeah, it was actually. Where I lived back then in Gothenburg, there was bands all around me, with members, a few years older than I was, back at that time. And, back then I thought, wow, man, these guys are great. They really can play the riffs and guitars, and they had bands and stuff, so I was really influenced by them, of course, so that also, was a big influence and a boost, of course, in starting playing guitar.
And what was it like living in Europe, where a lot of these bands that you've been speaking about have been bands that have come from the UK or the US? Did it feel like these places were, all these bands were so far away from you, or were they bands that were sort of already making the effort to come to your part of the world?
Yeah, they did actually. I was lucky because Gothenburg was actually a pretty happening city, and still is. A lot of bands play there.
Yeah.
So one of the first concerts I ever went to was, believe it or not, but I was Status Quo, and the support act was Black Oak, Arkansas, American band with Tommy Aldridge as the drummer back then.
Yeah.
That was back in '76. And I also went to see Blue Oyster Cult and, all those bands in the '70s, like Thin Lizzy, Queen. I've seen AC/DC, one of my favorite bands ever in the beginning. I've seen AC/DC twice with Bon Scott.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, that was great. And, a lot of bands in the '70s that I just, influenced me a lot, actually. Black Sabbath, and you name it, man. So I was really lucky with having a great rock scene back then, definitely.
Oh, I think if anybody was probably isolated at that time, it was probably us down in Australia for the most part. Apart from
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah, it was very hard to get down here, and it still is for a lot of bands. I mean, it's getting better, but we're in the arse end of the world. We're a long way away, so it's cool to hear those amazing stories of these iconic bands coming through Gothenburg around that time.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm really lucky that I experienced all that. That was a great school for sure. Without that, I probably wouldn't be in the position where I am now. Because you got so inspired by all those bands and the live shows, and so definitely yes.
Was there one of those bands in particular that sparked the want to play in a band, or even getting sort of a little bit further down the line, getting closer to kicking off King Diamond, or going further into a metal sort of space? Were there any particular bands or songs that sort of really pushed you in that direction of going, this is what I want to do?
I think all those bands that I mentioned had something that was really inspiring, but later on, when I really got into the more theatrical stuff of things, like listening to Kiss and maybe Alice Cooper and stuff, and combining that kind of stage show with good music, and also then Ozzy, when he came out with Randy Rhoads there, and you saw some really cool videos, in the mid '80s or early '80s with him. I thought that was really inspiring, that you actually can make a combination of, kind of a horror theme and theatrical stuff together with good music.
Oh, he certainly took that idea and ran with it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that definitely inspired me. That's for sure,
That's awesome. And I guess a big thing that was happening in the '80s, and a lot of people have been reflecting on this, is the tape trading, a way to discover new music and share music with lots of people and people from all around the world. Was tape trading a part of your life at any point in time?
Nah, not that much actually, not that big. I know some people, did a lot of tape trading, but no, I'm sorry to say that, no, not really. I had a few friends, but a little bit here and there, but that's about it, really. You went to friends and you got inspired by other kinds of music, and hey, listen to this, and maybe I should record that onto your tape and stuff like that. More like that than trading tapes seriously.
And I guess it would have been beneficial being based in Europe as well, because you're probably very close to, well, obviously close to a lot of neighbouring countries, but to be able to meet and be exposed to so many different types of bands and music that are just all at your doorstep.
Yeah, that's right. Great inspiration. And as I said, earlier, all those shows, in your area, or in Gothenburg at least, where I'm born and raised, that was like amazing, really. It was like every month, at least there was like some band coming into the city, And back then, it seems like the bands were releasing like albums like at least once a year, or maybe even twice a year back then, So awesome.
It's really different now, isn't it? I mean, the way that obviously the way that people listen to music, but even bands are moving with the times, and you're not getting the album a year now. There's a bit of space in between.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you can look at us, King Diamond. I mean, it's like 12 years since we released an album last time, But now we're working on it. At least, we have a few ideas, and in time there will be an album. That's for sure. We have a few songs already that we're working on.
Well, I was gonna mention King Diamond and what's happening in your neck of the woods, because I know that you're in the midst of touring through the summer in Europe and doing a lot of festival shows. And I did see that, and I got quite excited. I think I saw a bit of video footage of a new song being played a few weeks back as well. So probably a taste of things to come.
Yeah, exactly. We decided to play this one live, to get a little taste, a little different thing, that we actually, play it live before we release it, But it's going to be released, I guess, maybe end of September, October, something like that, or during October, maybe, It's going to be mixed properly and then released around somewhere in October, I believe. And we have a few other songs already, that we're working on, and as soon as we get a break, we're going to start writing more songs, So it's just a little taste, for the people to check out, It seems like it's very, they like it. The audience like it very much, I would say it's a pretty classical King Diamond thing coming out.
Really looking forward, as a big King Diamond fan for many years, I'm really looking forward to seeing what comes of all these songs, and eventually hearing the album when you guys eventually finish it all off and put it out there into the world. But it's exciting to see what you guys are doing this year. It seems to be a bit of momentum happening in the band.
Definitely. I can't reveal in the plans for right now, but we have plans for the upcoming fall too, and it will be announced in a week or two, I believe, so we'll definitely be busy with everything. Plus that we gonna record, the new songs and write songs and record it, of course, and hopefully sometime soon we can come down there to Australia and, that part of the world that we never ever been to so far, So that'll be great to do that.
I can imagine I've just lost my voice then, just about to try and respond to that. But I've got a lot of friends that would probably squeal at just the thought of you guys coming down. So that's very exciting. So we'll patiently wait, and we'll wait for some announcements down the track, and most importantly to hear some new King Diamond as well. I think it'd be really exciting. But Andy, from your point of view, personally, you've got your studio, Sonic Train Studios. What's happening in your neck of the woods outside of King Diamond?
Right now, we just have a break between the different tours in Europe. So we'll be jumping on there in about 2.5 weeks again. We'll do the last 4 shows of this European set here, which will include Stockholm, Copenhagen, 1 show in Czech Republic, and 1 last show in Germany. And then after that, we'll probably just go back and start writing new songs and record and all that until the next event will happen, which I can't really reveal yet, but I'll keep you posted with that. Yeah. And in the studio right now, I have a different producer working on vocals, actually, with a band called Niflheim.
Oh, nice.
Probably heard about them.
Definitely.
Yeah. They're in the studio right now doing some stuff. And last week I was working with a Norwegian band called Imperial Child. Oh, cool. Also a great talented band, So there are actually a lot of things happening in the studio too, but I'm not the only one working there right now because I really need a break, between the tours here, So I have some other people working for me actually, which is great sometimes, you know.
It's exciting as a fan and somebody that appreciates you as a player and personality, and somebody that I've certainly looked up to for quite a few years, and being a fan of King Diamond, of course. It's just really cool to talk to you and to get some of your stories and hear some of your stories from years gone by, and looking forward to seeing what the future brings.
Thank you. I hope that someday soon we can come down there, you know, and play for you guys. You know, that'll be absolutely great.
No, I'll try and hold you.
No
to
promises, no promises, no
Okay.
promises made though, you know, but that's my wish, you know. It's on my wish list, that's for sure.
To learn more about our guest, check out the show notes over at andydowling.net or lord.net.au, where you can also hear our brand new album, Fallen Idols. Cheers for listening, and this has been my nod to the old school. Larry, please.